As chair of this committee, I won't allow further harm to the rule of law in the course of our work. Mr. Bannon will comply with our investigation or he will face the consequences. Maybe he's willing to be a martyr to the disgraceful cause of whitewashing what happened on January 6th, or demonstrating his complete loyalty to the former president. So I want our witnesses to understand something very plainly. If you're thinking or following the path Mr. Bannon has gone down, you are on notice that.
Bruce DelValle is a constitutional law specialist. He joins me now from Annapolis, Maryland. Bruce, how likely is Bannon to actually face criminal charges?
I would say it's pretty unlikely. This is an area of the law that's very interesting, but it's not conclusive. Mr. Bannon appears to be exerting a privilege based upon a good faith belief from what Trump's lawyers are telling him and Mark Meadows' attorneys are telling him, that there is a presidential privilege. Now, the issue of presidential privilege, as the Supreme Court decided in 1974 with Richard Nixon, it does exist. It's not absolute, however. And then later in 1977, again with Richard Nixon, the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court decided that that privilege continues after the president has left office. In fact, we have some fascinating instances where President George W. Bush, a Republican, upheld the allegations or the assertion of presidential privilege for then former President Bill Clinton as it relates to Janet Reno. Additionally, Jimmy Carter in 1977 did what Biden is doing now and said he would not support Richard Nixon's claims of presidential privilege extending past his term in office. In 1977, the U.S. Supreme Court disagreed and said, yes, he still has a privilege, but the privilege has to be weighed against many mitigating factors. And one of the things, the most interesting thing, and you don't hear it much cited, this is a very esoteric area of the law, it's very fact specific, but the Supreme Court said the privilege is for the republic. It's to preserve the republic, not for the former president. It's not a personal privilege. It's a privilege relating to what he did in office and the factors surrounding the assertion of privilege. So where that leaves us is, I think, first of all, there's three ways that the contempt of Congress can be handled. One, in the way it appears to be, which is the criminal contempt from an 1857 statute. The House votes, they send it to the Attorney General, the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice decides to proceed. The second way is through a civil case where the House asks a federal court to decide that Mr. Bannon is in contempt of court and then fine him and then proceed forward. The third way is a very rare way, but many people are beginning to think it's the smartest way, where the House actually arrests Bannon. The sergeant of arms goes and grabs Mr. Bannon, drags him in front of the House, and decides, and the House gets to decide itself. And they get to imprison him. Now, the jail in the House has been shuttered. In the past, about 80 or 90 years ago, someone was held in contempt of Congress directly, and they were held in the Willard Hotel for 2 weeks. It's a little silly, but that could possibly happen.
Interesting. So what kind of precedent does this likely set? What kind of message here are the Democrats sending?
I think it's once again very clear, and I saw Kilmeny, and Kilmeny often talk. A lot of what American politics have broken down to is political theater. I think we're seeing a lot of political theater here. I don't think there's any real effort to get to the bottom of things as it relates to Steve Bannon. There is a lot of effort to make sure that America doesn't forget January the 6th, and that congressional Democrats are seen as making sure America doesn't forget January 6th. They're trying very hard to make an example of Bannon, and they're going to move on to try to make an example of President Trump. So a lot of this is political theater. It's going to take a long time. I fully expect there's a very real possibility that the Department of Justice won't move forward. It's fascinating. Joe Biden comes out immediately, hastily runs to a microphone and says, we are going to prosecute Mr. Bannon. The Department of Justice equally hastily issued a press release saying, hold on a minute. Any decision to prosecute Mr. Bannon is going to come through our DOJ processes and not the White House. So one of the things they're going to have to do is make sure they can convict Mr. Bannon. If Mr. Bannon has a good faith belief that he is operating under a presidential privilege, and he cannot be convicted of a crime. He has to have the criminal intent necessary to be convicted. So I think the Congress folks understand this, but they're pursuing this. It's theater. There's dance steps. Everybody knows it's going to take years to wind through. Even if he is indicted, there's going to be motions to dismiss based upon the privilege. A court's going to have to determine the privilege. It's going to wind its way through through the courts of appeal, and then probably to the Supreme Court. That's a couple of years. And when this Congress goes away in November 2022, they're going to have to start all over again.
Wow.
So I think this is political theater. It really is. For people like me and law professors, we're fascinated by it. It's a great news story, but I think it's an effort to make sure that everybody never forgets what Donald Trump is alleged to have done on January 6, 2021. That's what this is all about.
All right. Well, it was certainly fascinating to hear you break that down for us, and I appreciate your time, Bruce DelValle. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you again.